did the PSA commercial.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Yeah.
How did you feel? Like, how instrumental do you think you were, not only with Batgirl, but also in the 70s at the time when equal rights and equal pay was?
Yeah.
Do you think you were influential in any way?
I think he was just asking about the public service announcement that we did about equal pay for women, and it was an interesting. The interesting backstory on it was that they called and said, "Would you?" This is 3 years after we'd shot Batman, and they called and said, "Would you be willing to do a public service announcement about equal pay for women?" And I said yes. And I was busy shooting some other thing, and I said, "You know, you're going to have to find a costume because I have no idea." That was okay. So they went to Debbie Reynolds to look for the costume. And she had bought, just willy-nilly for her museum. She didn't really check things out. It was almost like Getty did for the museum. I mean, you know, they saw him coming and said, "Put it in TVs and it'll look old and you'll buy it." And so she bought a costume that was missing the front panel and then sleeve. And so, I mean, I can't shoot a public service announcement in a half-baked costume. So they said, "Well, wait a minute, we talked to Burt Ward, and he seems to think he can find one." Well, I only had 3. They had one that was completely shot because the knees were bagging and everything was bagging because it had been worn. And because I didn't have a stunt person, they didn't have to make one for a stunt girl. So we had one that was in production, that's the one that Debbie bought. We had one that I wore, and then we had a, you know, just a tacky, crummy one that I don't know what they did. They probably burned it. And so they said, "Bert may know where there's a costume." So I said, "Okay." So he came in and said that he had my costume. He had the hair, he had the whole 9 yards. He had my costume. And that belonged to Fox. So he said, a friend of mine owns this, which was not true. And he said, and so I need to get it back to him when the show is over. So that was all right. Then they called Adam to see if Adam would do it, and he was at that stage in his life where he said, "You know, I'm not working, and the reason I'm not working is because I have been typecast as Batman." And what happened to Adam, and it's working well for him now, but it didn't work then, was he became associated with that character, but he wasn't doing that voice for that character. That's how Adam talks. And so it was difficult for him to audition for anything after that because the speech cadence is very particular to him, and they thought he was doing Batman for every audition, so he didn't work a lot. And so he said he wanted to disassociate himself from that character, so he wouldn't do it. And when the next time I saw him, I said, "You just don't want women to have equal pay." But anyway, they got an actor named Dick Gautier. Does anybody remember him? Okay. Well, Dick Gautier could imitate anybody. He was like Frank Ocean. And so they dressed him up as Batman, and he was the Batman. So when you see that public service announcement, that's Dick Gautier. And the gist of it was that they had been tied up to a bomb and were asking for help. And essentially, I fly in on a rope, and they say, "Oh, thank God you're here, you're going to save us." And I essentially say, "When I get paid, when you get paid, you'll get saved." And so it was really fun. Anyway, so no, I don't think it did any good because it's public service. They would show it at like 2 and 3 in the morning when women who needed to know that they could demand equal pay were fast asleep in their bed because they had to get up and work for a lot less in the morning. So I don't think it did well. I mean, I don't think I was instrumental in doing any kind of help to equal pay for women. Who else has a question?